A 1910 railway photograph shows a steam crew standing beside a perfectly cut trench through solid rock. The walls are smooth and almost vertical. The curve is consistent, like it was set to a radius, not chipped until it worked. The track bed is level. The drainage channel is already formed. And the oddest part is what you don't see. There's no spoil pile anywhere near the cut. No mountain of broken rock. No carts. No temporary rail for hauling waste. Just clean geometry and finished grading, as if the mess happened somewhere else. If this was carved with 19th century hand tools and black powder, where did the rock go? The official explanation is familiar. Railways were built by huge crews. They used picks, drills, wedges, horses, steam shovels, and dynamite as it became available. They blasted rock, hauled spoil, laid ballast, and built bridges with riveted steel and masonry. Entire nations invested in rail as a symbol of progress. That explanation accounts for some things, but not this. What's missing here is the physical footprint. Large jobs leave scars. Camps, waste piles, temporary spur tracks, access roads, broken stone fields, and years of staged work. In some of these early photos, the finished rail corridor appears before the supporting chaos appears. The corridor looks complete, but the environment around it looks untouched. And that raises a problem that isn't about belief. It's about logistics. Take the scale of a typical cut and compare it to the people in the image. A man stands maybe 6 feet tall. The cut wall behind him rises several times his height. The width is wide enough for track clearance, drainage, and maintenance space. The floor looks graded, not rough. It suggests planning down to inches, but executed across miles. A crew with hand drills can make holes. A crew can blast. But blasting usually leaves irregular faces, creates shattered zones, produces piles of mixed rock sizes. Here, the walls often look trimmed, so you start looking for the human scale clues. Tool marks, chisel lines, drill hole patterns, staging platforms, scaffolding anchor points, any sign the wall was climbed and worked. Sometimes the photos show almost nothing. No ladders, no ropes, no drill stands, no broken edges, just a corridor. If the work was done the hard way, why do some sites look like they skipped the hardest parts? Then the bridges. In many places, the track doesn't simply avoid obstacles. It crosses them with stone viaducts that look older than the rails themselves. Multi-arch bridges, perfectly aligned, with consistent masonry courses. Some are so overbuilt they could carry far more than a single line. The rail is almost an afterthought laid across a pre-made spine. Officially, these were built by masons and engineers one block at a time. And that's possible. But it doesn't fully explain the uniformity across regions that had different budgets, different rock types, and different local skills. And it doesn't explain why certain viaducts have features that seem unnecessary for a simple rail crossing. Internal passageways, access doors leading into hollow chambers, ventilation openings, and side staircases built into the structure. Those are functional features, not decoration. Once you notice it in one place, it becomes harder to ignore elsewhere. The same style of corridor cuts appear in different countries. The same kind of stone viaducts appear in different climates. The same perfectly graded embankments appear on routes that should have been difficult with the equipment of the time. And then there are the tunnels. Some early tunnels have portals that look like formal architecture. Not just rough openings, but framed stone entrances with pilasters, cornices, and clean symmetry. Inside, some tunnels show lined brickwork that looks consistent for long distances, as if formed to a standard template. That doesn't mean something impossible happened. But it does suggest a pattern. The hardest parts of the system often look the most finished. And then comes the Tartaria label. For some viewers, Tartarian is a way of describing infrastructure that feels out of place in the timeline. Not because of one bridge or one tunnel, but because of how many appear at once, already mature, already standardized. The railways of the late 1800s and early 1900s expand fast, and the supporting structures often look like they were made to last centuries. If they were built quickly, they don't look quick. If they were built slowly, the records should show the slow stages. That's where the archives become uncomfortable. Rail companies kept paperwork. Governments kept surveys. Newspapers reported big projects. Yet, when you look for detailed construction sequences, some routes have strangely thin documentation. A line is proposed. Then, not long after, it is operating. The middle is missing. Maps show a planned corridor, then later editions show a finished one, but the intermediate edits are hard to locate. What's missing here is the messy layer. Temporary alignments, abandoned test cuts, failed bridge foundations, detours, and material yards. Those exist in some projects. In others, the story jumps. Even the language changes. Early reports speak in confident engineering terms. Later summaries compress everything into a sentence. Completed, improved, realigned. Sometimes the names of contractors vanish from later compilations. Sometimes photographs are undated or credited only to a railroad office with no location. Silence isn't proof, but it is a data point, and around 1910, something else appears to shift. You start seeing modernization campaigns, electrification in certain corridors, signal systems upgraded, old stations renovated, track standardized, and at the same time older-looking structures are reclassified. A viaduct becomes Victorian, a tunnel portal becomes heritage, a station becomes restored. The paper trail starts to read like a story that has already been settled. This is the disappearance event, not of tracks, but of questions. Because after 1910, many of the early construction mysteries stop being discussed at all. The focus turns to operation, schedules, profits, and accidents. The origin of the corridor becomes background noise. The structures are treated as if they were always obviously made the way we're told. A clean break like that raises a simple question. What kind of change causes everyone to stop describing how the system was physically created and start describing only how it is managed? Then you go back to the photographs and look again, not at the locomotives, at the land. Why do some rail cuts have edges so sharp they look trimmed? Why do some embankments have a consistent slope over long distances, like a measured template was applied again and again? Why do some stone viaducts contain interior spaces that aren't needed for rail load, but resemble access infrastructure? Why do tunnel portals sometimes look like civic monuments? And why do some early images show finished corridors without the temporary chaos that should surround active heavy work? If the answer is it was cleaned up later, that still doesn't explain the missing spoil in the moment the photo was taken. If the answer is the spoil was used elsewhere, that still requires a transport plan, staging areas, and time. If the answer is mass labor did it, that still leaves the problem of precision repeated across regions. The more you follow the physical evidence, the less it behaves like a series of local projects, and the more it behaves like a system. A system with standards, a system with templates, a system that, by 1910, is no longer being explained in public terms. And that leaves one last thought. If these railways were only the achievement of the tool sets were shown in museums, then the early photographs should match the expected mess, the expected scars, and the expected steps. But when the corridor looks finished before the story is told, it makes you wonder if the rails were the first thing built, or the last thing placed onto something that already existed. If you've seen early railway cuts, tunnels, or viaducts in your area that don't match the official timelines, you can leave a comment. And if you want to stay close to this investigation, you can like the video and subscribe.